All right, good afternoon, guys. Today we're going to be talking about key details in a text, okay? So to start this lesson off, I'm going to tell y'all a story, and I just want you to sit here and listen to the story, okay? All right, so Ted was 2 years old. His family loved him very much, but the community he lived in did not love him as much as his family did. One day, his family tried to take him to the movies. They stopped them and said, "Ted could not watch this movie. You have to take him home." Poor Ted, all he wanted was to sit on his parents' lap and watch a movie. Of course, his family didn't take him home from there, so they decided just to leave the movie theater and go out to eat instead. They didn't even make it into Pizza Hut when the owner started yelling at them to get out of his restaurant. What a sad day for Ted. So his parents just decided to go on home and play outside. Okay, so why do y'all think that no one wanted Ted to come to the movie theater or Pizza Hut? Anybody tell me?
Was he smelly?
He could have been smelly. What else?
Scary.
He looked scary. Different things like that. What would the story make? Would the story make sense if I had told you at the beginning that Ted was a dog? Yeah. He wasn't allowed in the movie theater or Pizza Hut because Ted was a dog. Okay, but that was a key detail of the text that was left out of the story. So it really didn't make sense when we were talking about it because how did we know what was wrong with Ted? Because they left out the detail that Ted was a dog. So we are going to learn how to ask and answer questions about key details in a story, okay? So it was very important for that detail to be in the story that Ted was a dog. So when we think about key details of a story, you want to think that they're an important part of the story. These details can be who's in the story, which would be characters. These details could be what happens in the story or why this happens in the story. But all of those are very important elements of the story itself. They can't be left out because if they're left out, then the story won't make any sense. So let's think about Little Red Riding Hood. Everybody knows the story of Little Red Riding Hood, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah? Okay. So would it make sense if I told the story and left out the fact that the bad guy was a wolf? Would the story make any sense?
Mm-hmm.
No? Okay, let's talk to our shoulder partners, and y'all can be a group of three so y'all can all talk, and tell another key detail in the story of Little Red Riding Hood, which can be who the characters are, what happened in the story, why that particular thing happened in the story. So go ahead and talk for just a second.
She didn't have grandma, she would have got it.
Red Riding Hood was long period. She didn't have grandma.
She didn't have a mother. What she called Little Red Riding Hood.
Little Red Riding Hood didn't get aged much. They got saved by the woodchopper.
What else?
But the wolf had tied grandma up in the closet, and he pretended to be the grandma. Okay, so let's come back together. So y'all's group, tell me, what was one detail that y'all came up with that was different from the wolf?
The wood chopper that saved Little Red Riding Hood.
Mm-hmm. Okay, what about y'all's group? What did y'all come up with? Another key detail. They said that the wood chopper saved them from grandma, or from the wolf.
The wood chopper?
Yeah.
So are we adding a detail, or are we saying what would be different?
Just what's another detail of the story? So who are other characters in the story?
The grandma.
Grandma. Okay, so these are all important details of the story that it would be hard to understand if they didn't have, right? All right, so let's think of another practical example of a key detail in our lives. So when we think of key details, would it make sense if y'all gave out birthday invitations to your friends and it didn't have the address of where the party was going to be?
Or the time.
Or the time? It would be really hard for your friends to come to your birthday party if they didn't have those details on that invitation, right? So that's a practical example of key details and why we need to know what key details are. Okay, so now we're going to move on and we're going to look at the book or the story, Bear Snores On by Karma Wilson, and the illustrations are by Jane Chapman. Okay, so just looking at the front of the story, who are all the characters? What characters do we see on the front of the story?
A bear,
A bear, right there.
A rabbit.
a mouse,
Yeah, a mouse is up there. This is a mole, yeah. Or well, that's a mole. And a rabbit or a hare.
Is that
A hare is another word for a rabbit.
Is that a crow?
Yeah.
yeah,
Okay. So these are all characters, right? On the front of the book. Okay, let's look at the back of the book. Is there anything on the back?
There's a teapot.
There's a teapot.
There's a teapot.
There's a cup.
Yep, there's a cup right there. Who's this?
There's a bear's
Bear's
foot.
leg.
It's the bear. The back of the bear.
It's like a quarter of a blanket.
Yeah, that might be what that looks like, or a rock, maybe.
The red thing.
Yeah,
Yeah, the
or
red
the white thing.
That looks like a
A rock,
It's
maybe.
not the red thing.
Oh yeah, that is a blanket. I didn't even see that. All right, so let's move on and start reading our story. So, Bear Snores On by Karma Wilson and illustrations by Jane Chapman. If you two want to bring your chairs up right here, you can. That way y'all can see just a little bit better, because it's hard to hold this.
Can I read it out there?
Yeah, you want to help? Just as long as you listen while you're helping, okay? In a cave in the woods, in his deep, dark lair, through the long, cold winter, sleeps a great brown bear. Okay, so do we know what the word lair means?
Is it his home?
Yeah, it's kind of like his home. It's where wild animals sleep, okay? Cuddled in a heap with his eyes shut tight, he sleeps through the day, he sleeps through the night. The cold winds howl and the night sounds growl, but the bear snores on. So what's the bear doing right now?
Sleeping.
What does it look like it's doing outside?
Snow.
Snowing. An itty bitty mouse, pitter pat tiptoe, creep crawls in the cave from the fluff cold snow. Mouse squeaks too damp, too dank, too dark. So he lights wee twigs with a small hot spark.
That's a smart one.
He is a smart mouse. So now we have a new character. It's not just the bear, it's the mouse too. The coals pit pop and the wind doesn't stop, but the bear snores on. Two glowing eyes sneak peek in the den. Mouse cries, "Who's there?" And a hare hops in. So remember what I said at the beginning? A hare is the same thing as a rabbit. They're all in the same family. "Ho, Mouse," says Hare. "Long time no see." So they pop white corn and they brew black tea. And white corn is the same thing as popcorn. Okay? Mouse sips wee slurs. Hare burps big burps. But the bear snores on. Did y'all snore through all this? Did y'all stay asleep through all this? A badger scuttles by, sniffs snuffs at the air. "I smell yummy yums. Perhaps we can share." "I've brought honey nuts," Badger says with a grin. "Let's divvy them up, cozy down, and dig in." Okay, so honey nuts are just the same thing. They're in the nut family. And then divvy them up. What do you think divvy them up means? Do we know?
Like give them
Yeah.
out.
Yeah, so they just share it and hand them out.
Sharing is caring.
And they nibble and they munch with a chew chomp crunch. But the bear snores on. A gopher and a mole tunnel up through the floor, then a wren and a raven flutter in through the door. So who are the rest of these? Who are these people? or animals. There are more characters. So the mole and the gopher and the wren and the raven. Yeah. Mole mutters, "What a night! What a storm!" twitters Wren, and everybody clutters in the great bear's den. So what are they doing? They look like they're having fun, don't they? They're just sitting beside the fire, getting all warm through the winter storm. They tweet and they titter, they chat and they chitter, but the bear snores on. In a cave in the woods, a slumbering bear sleeps through the party in his very own lair. So slumbering means he's just sleeping. He's sleeping through the whole party in his own little cave. Hare stokes the fire, mouse seasons stew. So do we know what stew is? Stew is the same thing as soup. So they're warming up their soup for their supper. And then stoke the fire means to poke or to stir up. So he was just doing that so that the fire would stay warm and it wouldn't go out through the night. Then a small pepper fleck makes the bear. What do you think he's going to do? What do you think is going to happen? He's going to wake up?
He's gonna
snore. He's gonna sneeze. He's
You think he's
gonna
going
snore.
to? Okay, let's see. Achoo! He blows and he sneezes, and the whole crowd freezes. What would y'all do if y'all were a character? You run? You'd be scared? Think you'd be. What do you think? What do you think the bear's gonna do when he sees all people in his house?
Be mad. Or
Yeah, I'd be mad.
Party? And the bear wakes up.
just not look at
Bear gnarls and he snarls. Bear roars and he rumbles. Bear jumps and he stomps. Bear growls and he grumbles. So it looks like everybody's running away and he's mad. He's not happy. Let's see. You snuck in my lair and you had all the fun, but me, I was sleeping, and I have had none. And he whimpers and he moans, he wails and he groans, and the bear blubbers on. Was this what you were expecting? Were you expecting him to be upset and sad? No? He's a big baby, he's a big teddy bear. Mouse squeaks. Don't fret, don't fuss. Look, see, we can pop more corn. We can brew more tea. So what do you think he's going to do? Do you think he's going to join the party?
No, he's gonna party.
Think he is?
He's
Bear gulps, bear gobbles. He sighs with delight. Then he spins tall tales to the blustery night. When the sun peeks up on a crisp, clear dawn, Bear can't sleep. What do you think? What do you think everybody else is doing? Everybody else sleeps. Everybody else sleeps. Another word that we may not know is blustery. Blustery means like windy or gusty. So you know how when it snows outside it gets pretty windy and cold? That's what blustery means. But his friends snore on. So what is he doing now? He's just sitting there.
He's
bored. He's bored. Because all of his friends are asleep. He's pillow. Yeah, he's a pillow for everybody. All right. So now let's look and see. So can somebody tell me who our characters were?
The bear.
Okay, the bear,
The mouse.
the mouse,
The hare.
badger, the hare,
The mole.
the mole, gopher,
The
wren, and the crow or the raven. So we have 8 characters. That's a lot in a story. What's one key detail that you can come up with in the story that was really important?
The bear snored.
The bear snored, so he was asleep when everybody came in.
It was his house.
They were going in his house or his cave. What else?
They were partying without him.
They partied without him. Okay.
Woke up.
Yep. He then woke up. What did he do after he woke up?
He partied.
He partied with them, right? Can somebody tell me what the setting of this story is?
In the lair. The lair.
The lair, the cave. What's going on outside? What makes everybody come inside the cave?
Cold.
It's cold, it's snowing, it's windy. Okay? So now let's look and see. We're gonna now create a bubble map. Okay? So a bubble map is just where there's a bubble in the middle and then there's a bunch of bubbles coming off. And we're going to go through what the key details are in the story. We're going to write down who the characters are, and we're going to basically write down what we've been talking about so far, okay? So let's go ahead and do that. Here, I'll bring this over here just so that we can have it sitting over here. All right, so I'm going to put Bear Snores On in the middle because that's what our story is. See, we have our bubble. All right, now, characters. Let's name our characters again. Okay, so we have the bear,
The mouse.
the mouse,
The badger.
badger,
The crow.
hare, the crow,
The mole.
mole,
Gopher.
gopher,
The wren.
wren. Well, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's all. Okay. Now let's move on. So, what was the setting? What did we just say the setting was?
The layer.
The layer,
It was cold and snowy.
Winter.
cold, snowy, winter. What did we say that the layer meant? That was a new word that we didn't know.
A place where animals sleep.
Place where animals sleep, or wild animals sleep. Okay, so let's work through the beginning of the story. So what happened throughout the story? At the very beginning, what happened?
He was snoring.
The bear was asleep and he was snoring, right? So the bear was asleep. What was going on outside while the bear was sleeping?
The storm.
It was snowing.
Yeah, the storm. So it was snowing or storming outside. Okay, so then what happened? What happens next? The mouse came in to get away from what? The
cold.
cold. So the mouse. What did the mouse do when he came in?
Quiet.
He came in quietly.
He started a fire.
He started a fire. Okay, so then what happened after the mouse started a fire? Who joined next? Do we remember?
Was it the hare?
Yep, the hare joined him next. Okay, so what were him and the hare doing? Getting warm, making tea, and what else? What did we say?
Popcorn.
Popcorn.
The white corn.
Yep, the white corn that we said was like popcorn. So they were making tea and popping popcorn. Okay, so then what happened next?
Did more people join?
Yep, I think, who joined next? Let's go back and look.
Was it the badger?
The badger and the mole, maybe? There's the mouse. There's the hare. That's still the hare.
Yep.
Okay. What did the badger bring with him?
Nuts.
Nuts. That's right. So, badger joined with nuts. And they were just all sharing and having fun, right? Okay, so what was next? What was all going on in the background while all of these things are happening?
The bear's snoring.
The bear is snoring on, right? Right? Okay. So then they're eating. Then who joins them?
Everyone else.
All of the other characters.
Go for the mole.
The gopher and the mole, the raven, and the wren. So gopher, mole, raven, and Ren join. Okay? So even when all of these characters join, the bear is still snoring on, right? He's still sleeping. Okay? What was the big turning point where the bear woke up? Here's the page. What were they doing with Pepper?
Seasoning the soup.
They were seasoning the stew, which is what?
Soup.
Soup, right. So they were seasoning the soup or the stew, and it got in the bear's nose, right? So what did the pepper do?
Made him sneeze. They woke up the bear.
It woke up the bear. Finally, he was still snoring on, and the pepper finally woke him up, right? So then what?
He was sad.
He was hangry.
He was hangry. Why was he sad, Taylor?
Because they were fighting without him. And they all came into his lair.
Yeah. So the bear was sad because they were partying without him. Okay. So what did the mouse suggest?
But they make more tea and popcorn.
Yep. So the mouse says we can all eat together, right? Eat and party together. And that's what happened, right? They all ate and they had fun and they talked and they told tall tales throughout the whole night. And then at the very end, what was the bear doing while all of his other friends were?
He was awake.
He was awake in his cave.
His friends snored.
While his friends snored on. So the bear was awake, and his friends snored on. All right, so would y'all say that everything in this is pretty important?
Mm-hmm.
What would you pick out if you had to pick one thing? What would you pick out that's the most important detail of this story?
The middle.
The middle, where the bear snores on. Because if the bear was awake when all of his friends came in, it would be a completely different story, right? And then of course, the characters are super important, and the setting is super important, and then the whole plot is really important, okay? But the key detail is that the bear snored on. So it wouldn't have made any sense to do the same story if the bear was awake. It would have been a completely different story, right? All right, so now let's move back up to the front of the classroom. All right, so now that we've talked about that, we're going to move into small groups, okay? So Taylor and Tyler, if y'all go back to your desk, and then we'll do a group of 3 and a group of 2, okay? All right. In your groups, we're going to have 2 different things. We'll start y'all all up here using the smart boards, and Charlotte already sitting right here. So I'm going to hand out these worksheets. Don't write anything on them right now. Just leave them sitting in front of you. And then I'm going to give y'all your worksheets. All right. And then I'm going to give y'all your materials that you're going to need. Just these. You can use markers or crayons. And then blue.
Thanks, Miss Hodge.
You're welcome. Okay, so let's all listen together. We're not going to touch anything. We're going to keep our eyes up here, okay? Yes. I'll get you a pen or a pencil. Two. All right, so let's pay attention to what we're going to be doing in both of our groups, and then we can split up and y'all can start working, okay? So in the group over here with Taylor and Tyler, you're going to have this little sheet, okay? So this is talking about Little Red Riding Hood. So we've already talked about the story, so we should be familiar with what the story is and how it kind of goes. Does anybody need me to retell the story really fast so that we know what the story is? No? We're all good. Okay. So with this, what you're going to do is where the little dotted lines are, you're going to cut out each word. Okay? So there's 2 setting blocks, 2 character blocks, an event, and a solution. Okay? Solution means that whatever was happening in the story is resolved. So solution could be the same thing for Little Red Riding Hood as the end of the story. Okay? Just so that we're all good with that. So we're going to cut out our little blocks, and then you're going to, there's glue over there, so you're going to glue each block where it should go, okay, in your little chart here. Once you've glued them where you think they should go, call me over, we'll look at them, we'll go through them, and we'll make sure they're in the right block before the glue dries, okay? Make sure you put your name on all of the worksheets. And then once you're done and letting the blocks dry, you can go back through and color the little pictures until we need to swap groups, okay? Now in this other group, we're going to look at the Ugly Duckling. And we're going to actually let the smartboard read it to you, and you're going to follow along in the story. Once the story is done, you're going to trace, it says the characters are, and you'll trace that, and then you'll finish the sentence. So you'll write who the characters are. You'll put the characters' names down, okay? Then you'll do the same thing for the setting. The setting is, where was the story happening? Where was the story taking place? When the story happens in the, so you'll guess like, is it snowing outside for winter? Is it bright and pretty outside for summer or spring? Are there leaves on the ground for fall? That kind of thing. And then you'll put in this story, and you'll put what happened in the story. You put what the main idea was in the story, what happened in the story. And then the very bottom one is at the end. So you'll put what happens at the very end of the story. Okay? And I'll be walking around helping, so if you have any questions, just call me over and we can talk about it, okay? But I'm going to go ahead. Taylor and Tyler, y'all can go ahead and start cutting things out. All right.
The Ugly Duckling. Once upon a time, there was a duckling born on a quiet farm. His brothers and sisters were small and covered in downy yellow feathers. The duckling was bigger than the rest of them. Instead of soft and yellow, his feathers were rough and gray. Instead of quacking, the duckling honked. Instead of walking gracefully, he waddled. All of the animals on the farm teased him for being so strange. "He's so ugly," his neighbors whispered when they thought he wasn't listening. This made the duckling so sad that one night, as the other ducks slept near the barn, he snuck away to find a new home. He waddled over the hills and through the woods until he came upon a cozy little house. Inside, he found a kind old woman who lived with a rooster and a cat. "You're not ugly," they told him. "You're just different, and you're wonderful just the way you are." Time passed, and the duckling grew and grew. He grew until he was bigger than the rooster and bigger than the cat. He was happy in his new home, but he still felt like he didn't belong. His new home was full of wonderful friends, but they weren't big or gray, or even ducklings. He wished he could be as red as rooster. He wished he could be as soft as cat. He wished he could quack. One morning, as he watched the sun sparkling on the pond, he saw a family of beautiful swans float by. Lucky birds, he thought. He looked into the water and saw his reflection for the first time. "Ah, is that me?" he said, shaking his feathers in disbelief. He wasn't a funny-looking duckling anymore. He had grown into a beautiful swan. He jumped into the water, honking his loudest honk. "I'm not ugly at all," he said. "I'm just different. And I'm wonderful, just the way I am."
That's the end of the story. If you need me to, I can play it again or I can take it back to a certain page. You need some help with what's going on, okay? And I'll be over there to help you in just a second. Y'all can talk in your group too about any questions that you have. That's why you're in those groups, okay? Writing finish your character. Good job. Grandma's house, the setting, the woods, the setting. Would you ever think that a wolf was in grandma? No, it's crazy. Okay, so the wolf is a character. The solution, the woodcutter comes and sees. Good job. All right, color your story. All right, let's look at yours, Tyler. All right, Little Red Riding Hood is a character. Grandma's house is a setting. Good job. All right, go ahead and finish gluing them down. And then you can color too. You can use crayons or even stick markers. Doesn't matter. All right, what are we thinking over here? Who are the characters? Yeah. The main ones, yeah.
Ugly duckling.
Click on a button to read the story.
You put it back. You just put them back down. So if the setting is in different places, you just put down the different places.
Once, he waddled over the hill. Time passed, and the duckling grew and grew. He grew until he was bigger than a rooster and bigger than a cat.
Okay, sunset in the winter. Yeah, I would say it was in the summer. Because let's look. It's bright outside. You see leaves. There's lots of green.
He was happy in his new home, but he still felt like he didn't belong. His new home was full of wonderful friends, but they weren't big or gray or even ducklings. He wished he could be as red as rooster. He wished he could be as soft as cat. He wished he could quack.
Good over here. Good job. Your pictures are pretty. Both of your pictures are pretty. So what happened in the story? Who was the ugly duckling? He was bullied. Why was he made fun of? Everybody thought he was ugly and different. So then what happens?
He goes to the grandma's house.
What happens at grandma's house?
It grew.
He grew, he's accepted, they love him. Then what happened? He turned into a swan, but he didn't know he was a swan. He thought he was an ugly duckling. And then he had his people at the very end. They were just like him. All right, about another minute and let's finish up and then we're gonna switch groups. This trash, this trash. Yeah, I hate when the food
That's what the
not sniff the glue. That's one thing we don't do. We don't snip glue. We put the glue on the paper and then we put the paper on the other paper. That's what we do, okay? All right, is everybody good over here? Yeah? Everybody good over here? Yeah, okay. I'll take your papers. We'll let them dry. Put them back here so nobody can see them. All right, so y'all switch tables. Alright, so do we remember what we're doing right here? We're gonna cut out the blocks. We only have one pair of scissors, so we gotta show the scissors. So you can cut off on the black line and then cut out your blocks and then put them in. If y'all want to start coloring your pictures while you're waiting on the scissors, you can do that, okay? Call me back over here once you've glued them in the right place and we'll look and make sure they're in the right place. Okay? So look, we're going to read the story. Okay, we're going to read the story that's on the board. And then we're going to basically just answer the questions. If you have any questions, I'm going to be walking around. Call back over here. If you don't remember something, I can put it back up on the board with that page on it, or we can talk about it, whatever we need to do. Okay?
The Ugly Duckling.
Alright, ready?
Once upon a time, there was a duckling born on a quiet farm. His brothers and sisters were small and covered in downy yellow feathers. The duckling was bigger than the rest of them. Instead of soft and yellow, his feathers were rough and gray. Instead of quacking, the duckling honked. Instead of walking gracefully, he waddled. All of the animals on the farm teased him for being so strange. "He's so ugly," his neighbors whispered when they thought he wasn't listening. This made the duckling so sad that one night, as the other ducks slept near the barn, he snuck away to find a new home. He waddled over the hills and through the woods until he came upon a cozy little house. Inside, he found a kind old woman who lived with a rooster and a cat. "You're not ugly," they told him. "You're just different, and you're wonderful just the way you are." Time passed, and the duckling grew and grew. He grew until he was bigger than the rooster and bigger than the cat. He was happy in his new home, but he still felt like he didn't belong. His new home was full of wonderful friends, but they weren't big or gray or even ducklings. He wished he could be as red as rooster. He wished he could be as soft as cat. He wished he could quack. One morning, as he watched the sun sparkling on the pond, he saw a family of beautiful swans float by. Lucky birds, he thought. He looked into the water and saw his reflection for the first time. "Is that me?" he said, shaking his feathers in disbelief. He wasn't a funny-looking duckling anymore. He had grown into a beautiful swan. He jumped into the water, honking his loudest honk. "I'm not ugly at all," he said. "I'm just different. And I'm wonderful, just the way I am."
Alright, that's the end of it. So y'all go ahead and start writing down what you think is right. Okay, you're good to go ahead. Start gluing stuff down in the color. Alright.
The Ugly Duckling.
Click on a button to read the story.
Is good? Okay, so who do we think that the characters are? The duckling, the ugly duckling. And who else? The old lady or the grandma, yeah. Who else? There's more. I think there's more. What about, who's with the grandma?
Cat.
cat,
Rooster.
a rooster,
The swans.
swans. I think that's it. Okay. So where do we think the setting took place at? I know it took place in a couple of different places.
Once upon a time,
Farm.
there was a duckling born on a quiet farm. His brothers and sisters were small and covered in downy yellow feathers.
One of our other characters. Who did we say was important to you? Grandma? The old lady. The old lady? So the old lady's house would be another setting. Okay, what about the setting? Happens in the, so do we think that the setting happens in the winter? Does it look like winter time in this picture? Does it look like snowing? It's not. What about fall? Do we see leaves on the ground, changing colors? What about spring? Do we see lots of flowers? Probably summer. Probably summer. That's what I would say too. Okay, so what happened in this story? Y'all tell me what happened? What was the main part of the story?
There was an ugly duckling, and he was bullied, and then he turned into a swan.
Why was he bullied?
He was ugly.
He was
They thought he
different.
was different. Exactly. So in the stories, he was bullied, he was made fun of because he was different, and then it turns out he turns into a beautiful swan at the very end, right? So that answers the last two questions. At the end, he turns into a swan. Okay, so finish writing that up, and then we'll come back together as a whole group, and we'll talk about this story. Okay? Good?
Story.
Red? Pink?
I think we're thirsty.
Alright, finish up these last little colorings, and then we're gonna come back together as a whole class, okay? Good. Alright, so we're done? Yes. Good? Yeah. Alright. Last ones. Go ahead. Put our numbers back up. We can finish it later. But we gotta come back together and talk as a class. Alright. Give me these. Alright, we'll let them dry back here. Let's go back to your original seats. I'll take this. Alright. So we all listened to the story of the ugly duckling, right?
The
We all
ugly
listened to it,
duckling.
and then we answered questions about it. Well, let's talk about those questions that we answered really fast and just see if we can understand what the key details of the story are. Okay? So who can tell me what a key detail is? Not in the story, but just as a whole, what is a key detail? An important part of the story. What can that include? That can be an event in the story, a character, a setting. It can be what happens, why that happens in the story. So it can be all of those, right? Okay, so when we looked at the very front of this ugly duckling, what did we see? An ugly duckling. Do we think he's ugly?
No.
You think he's ugly? I think he's kind of cute. So then what happens?
Once upon a time, there was a duckling born on a quiet farm.
What happens?
His brothers and sisters were small and covered in downy yellow.
He was bullied, right? Why was he bullied? He was different. In this, I know it's kind of hard to see because I don't want it talking, but you can see right here where he's kind of bigger, he's gray, he's got more feathers. These little ducklings are small and they're yellow, so he was different. Okay? So what happened after he got bullied and made fun of? He left. Where did he go? Grandma's house. The old lady's house, right? What happened while he was there? He grew, he got bigger. What else? He made friends. He was accepted. They didn't think he was different. Okay? happened after that?
Kim Swan.
He became a swan. How did he know that he was a swan? He looked in the pond, so he saw his reflection. Did he also see other birds and other swans that looked like him?
Yeah.
So he felt like he was finally accepted, right? Okay, so who are the characters?
Swan.
Swans, the ducklings,
Grandma.
grandma,
Rooster.
cat, rooster, and the ugly duckling / swan, right? Okay, what's the setting? Where were the two main settings?
The farm.
The farm at the very beginning,
The old ladies.
and the old lady's house, right? And then when did it take place? What time of the year?
Summer.
Summer. Why did we say it was summer?
Hanging out with
Yeah, they were hanging out clothes. It looks like it's hot outside. It looks green trees, bright. Green trees, right. Okay, so it seems like we have a good concept of what key details are in the story. So for the very end of this, does everybody have something they can write with? Kylie, you need something? Okay, so now all I want you to do is just write down what key details are. Okay, so we talked about it. What did we say were the three main things? Key details are important in the story. They can be characters, setting, what happens in the story or why it happens. Think about Bear Snore Home. Just write down what you think a key detail is, okay? Just the definition, just what we think key detail is as a whole. You can draw a picture, you can do anything from what we've done today, any of it. All right, we're all good? We're all done? All right. Thank y'all for listening and being as attentive and helpful as y'all were today.